He's spent over 30 years in the clinic and on the field, supporting both pro athletes and weekend warriors. Now, sports physiotherapist and Coreshorts creator Greg Bay is taking you inside the locker room with the show Injuries, Innovations, and Insights.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to Injuries, Innovations, and Insights, a podcast about what's been in the past, what's coming up in the future, and interviewing some amazing guests about what makes them tick in the sports medicine world, both from an entrepreneurial point of view, but also from people who are leading our education and innovation and research. Today, we have a very special guest. Dr. Scott Howitt is here, who is currently the president of the Royal College of Chiropractic Sports Sciences. He is an amazing pedigree. He currently is a professor at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College, sessional instructor at the University of Guelph at Humber, varsity chiropractor, University of York. He's the director of the Move Lab, certified acupuncturist. He's a registered kinesiologist, as well as certified strength and conditioning specialist. I know he's done a master's degree in human health and nutritional sciences and a 3-year post-op program in rehabilitation sciences as well. So the biggest thing is Scott's also been part of some of our major games at 2015 in the Pan Am Games. And Scott and I have worked a number of times with Canadian men's national soccer team. So he's very well published. He's very well lectured. He's a keynote. One of the greatest things about Scott is when we get together, all we do is chat. Our brains are fired off from an entrepreneurial point of view, from an innovation point of view, and I sure look forward to inviting you to the show today, Dr. Scott Howitt.
Thanks, Greg. I'm honored that you invited me. We've had some great chats over our times at various different things together, and usually we have quite a few laughs, so hopefully we can capture a little bit of that this morning.
Well, exactly. So now, listen, Scott, a lot of people aren't necessarily going to be familiar with, the Royal College of Chiropractic Sports Sciences, in the sense that it is a very stringent process. I believe you say that it's an innovative and intense postgraduate sports sciences residency program. So maybe you can elaborate on that. Tell us what the meat and potatoes are versus when you have a chiropractic designation, but then you go through this program in order to become a sports specialist. So tell us more about it.
Well, Greg, and I obviously I listened to a few of your previous podcasts, and I got to hear your story and how you ended up where you are today, and some of the great people that sort of influenced you along the way. I did an undergrad in physical education because it was before kinesiology. So at that time it was called physical education. And of course, I went to Western. I was thinking I was going to go to med school. And I was in the athletic injuries program, and the athletic therapist at Western at the time, Gary Lipensky, was really the guy who got me on the path on the sports injury side of things. And so when I decided to go to chiropractic college, I never really wanted to have a family practice kind of a chiropractic clinic. That wasn't my ambition. I really did want to work with sports and the athletic side from day one. At that time, CMCC in Toronto, the school in Toronto, had just started this residency program for this sports chiropractic. So in fact, that's why I went to CMCC. That was my goal to go there. The sports chiropractic program dates back like to the early 80s, like 1984. There were some weekend sort of continuing education pathways in order to get that additional education. I was fortunate enough to be, one of the first, not the first, but one of the first few handful of people that went through the sports residency program at CMCC. It was an amazing experience. Certainly fine-tuned diagnostic skills, fine-tuned, biomechanical understanding. You have to do research in order to get through the residency program. So it trains you also to be a teacher and a leader in sports, really, with that chiropractic side of things, right? So the program has evolved since I was a student taking it, and now I'm the president of the association. I think if you're in it long enough, eventually you have to take your turn, right? But the program is outstanding, and really we are developing some real high level sports chiropractic therapists that have produced some literature, working on research, producing things that are helpful across the sports therapy field, not just in the chiropractic. Of course, there's coursework. Of course, there's field work. There's 1,000 hours that you have to actually complete over your residency in order to sit for our fellowship exam. So, we have approximately 140 members or fellows, maybe 130 to 140, and another 30 residents right now that are working towards getting those accreditations and getting towards those requirements to write their examinations too.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's a growing field, but not at the expense of the the intensive program that needs to be completed. So in general terms, when you go through this residency program and you qualify, then you're allowed to be called a sports chiropractor?
Yeah, so in chiropractic, there's 5 specialties, of which sports is one of them. So completing that residency program allows you to write your fellowship exam. Passing that exam then gives you the designation of sports specialist chiropractor.
Right. And so just so we know that if we see somebody marketing or referring to themselves with that designation, then we are to assume that they've gone through the program.
Yeah, and so the designation, similar to medicine, really, is you'll see an FRCCSSC, so a Fellow of the Royal College Chiropractic Sports Sciences.
Right. And part of that designation is, of course, we've got a lot of great volunteers on weekends that go out and work with teams, but they may not have that credential. And part of the credentialing, when we take a look at the sort of national and Olympic rules and regulations, there's a number of rules now that say that the committees will back up that designation to make certain therapists eligible for selection for major games. Is that true in the chiropractic world?
Yeah, exactly. And you make a great point. There's and the same thing happens with SPC and sport physio, right? So we have all kinds of practitioners that want to get involved in sports in their local community and be involved in different athletic events. That's unbelievable. And I think it's fun, and that's why people like to do it. At the same time, when you're applying at that higher level, that national level, the expectation is that we're taking the highest credentialed practitioners across the board. And so that's, sport physio, sport massage therapy, CATA with the number of years of experience, and then the fellow for the RCSS.
Yeah. And certainly, from the global part of it, it raises the bar, and so it should be. If we see a chiropractic clinic and it says, sport chiropractic, are we also to say that can be a designation that there's a sports chiropractor there, or can you actually call your clinic that without having the specialty designation?
So again, I think there's a lot of practitioners that are athletic. They want to be involved in sports, and they like to treat sports injuries. Usually people that are athletic are quite keen on getting back to whatever they're getting back to. And I think you and I would agree that that's a sort of a niche of people that we like to see. But the designation of the sports specialist is the way to set that apart. It's not to say that there's not great people all over the country treating athletic injuries and treating sports injuries in their communities. But it's the specialty designation that is the differentiator there, not just having sports in the name.
Yeah, and I bring it up because one of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that there's in all of our professions, people will get on the high horse of marketing as calling themselves a sports injury facility. And yet when you look at the Rolodex in there, there's nobody qualified under the sports specialty professions designations to actually warrant that place to be called that. And that's a different legislative issue. So just so people don't get confused that you can have a name of a clinic that provides a scope of what people treat versus them having the specialty designation as the individual that's in it.
You nailed it, exactly. And I mean, the same holds true for medicine as well, right? You could see your family doctor who's quite adept at, looking at and diagnosing a knee injury, or they might refer you to a sports medicine physician, a CASM sport med doc, or an orthopedic surgeon, right? Yeah. With that specialty level.
Yeah. So let's dig a little deeper into, the world of sport chiropractic. First of all, I'm completely biased because not only a lot of my now friends sport chiropractors, but I've been really lucky to be invited to speak at a number of conferences, both out west, and you had me out east as part of a panel as we discussed integrated systems with the Canadian national soccer team. And I really find it refreshing and enjoyable about the fact that, there are no doors closed to the sport chiropractic world, that when you get to that level, the egos are put aside and we're all there for the same common thread of sharing knowledge and learning. And also, being able to create more resources that we all can tap into. So tell us a little more about the busyness of sport chiropractic, and in particular your continuing education system.
So I think it's probably true of all professions at this point, healthcare professions, that you're required to do some continuing education. In the sports world, we're really quite fortunate that our associations put on some great events and some great conferences. So, I mean, I've been part of the RCSS conferences now for the last number of years, and helping bring in multidisciplinary, high-level speakers and presenters to really try to pull this narrative together, if you will. SPC was there was a great conference in Vancouver a couple of years ago, international conference that, that was outstanding. CASM, any year you go to CASM, sport medicine conference, right? These conferences are always fun to go to. Certainly you leave with nuggets that you want to put back into your practice on Monday morning, so to speak. But this is also where you see lots of these innovations and people trying to be on the cutting edge of where science is at any given time. And that's actually sports in general, to be honest with you, right? Like, we're always kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. And so the continuing education world on sports, on the sports injury side is unreal. Like, that's one of the silver linings of this COVID pandemic we find ourselves in is the amount of time that we've been able to dive into podcasts like this, or webinars, or some of the, recorded conferences that you didn't have a chance to see earlier. I remember, back in May and June, it felt a little bit like my head was going to explode. The number of things that I was like trying to fill my time with. So, and I think we're all kind of passionate about wanting to know more too, right? So, there's a real opportunity, and one of the opportunities that I see on this continuing education side is to bring people together too, right? I'm not really that interested in going to a conference where it's just all chiropractors speaking or all sports chiropractors speaking. I want to go to a conference where you're on a panel. We have some orthopedic surgeons there. We got some biomechanist PhD guys there. We have some coaches there. And that's far more, brain stimulating to me. And perhaps that's why we're on this conversation right now.
Well, it is, right? And, we talk with our head coach that, that we've been really lucky to be connected with. John Herdman talks about the 1% rule. And, the 1% is probably 10 or 20 things that equal 1%, so, what that edge looks like. I had physiotherapist Danny Langford on a previous show, and she's working on this most amazing program with Alex McKechnie to really enhance the ability for the education for coaches and young athletes and parents to take a look at how to develop more optimal movement patterns early. And with that said, it's again, maybe what you learn at 7 and 8 years old can be a portion of 1% when you get to the Ferrari zone of high performance, right? So we get to dive in quite often as a response to injury, but what we get to do collectively is continually work on the prevention of it. So maybe you could sort of circle into, we hear globally, we globally think about chiropractic, manipulation and adjustment doesn't equal chiropractic. Chiropractic, maybe you could sort of expand on the philosophy and the educational sort of flow of the brain of chiropractic, as opposed to the fact that there's certain tools that a chiropractor uses to get there. Because, we'll hear about it all the time. Chiropractors, they just manipulate. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, not the ones I work with. Or there's a certain framework of mystique around some of the maybe the less known or the less popular or less research aspects of spinal manipulation in healthcare. So maybe you could just touch a little bit on those things.
That's a pretty big can of worms you might be opening there. So I'll try to navigate the simplicity of it if it's possible. But it's funny. I think actually a manipulation or an adjustment, or that it's just another one of the tools I happen to have in my tool belt. Obviously, there's advanced training in that to become a chiropractor, and I would say that's probably one of our skills that we've really honed and we should be proud of and say, hey, we're capable of doing that. But at the end of the day, I think we're just trying to help people move better. And, I think back to when I was doing my master's, my advisor, one of the things he always used to say was by hook or crook. And it was like kind of like this thing that just came to my brain. But by hook or crook, we're trying to make people move better. And whether that's soft tissue work, or whether that's a manipulation, or whether that's a better cue, or whether that's a pair of shorts over your left shoulder there that help stabilize something to the core a little bit better, like whatever it is, we're looking to try to figure out how to let you move better. And I mean, in my experiences, and certainly working with you, Greg, with the soccer guys, or I think back to 2015 when I was at the Pan Am Games, I would be on a table next to Chris Napier, sport physio out of Vancouver, and like he's not that much taller than me, so I felt like we were like kind of like we were, and I think in some ways, and obviously we had different people that were like seeking out his services versus mine, but in some ways we were a little bit interchangeable as the one of those short guys at that end of the room, that because we were very hands-on, very manual in our approach, but at the end of the day we were both trying to do the same thing, helping people move better. And so I don't know if I'm really quite answering your question here, but I don't really think of myself as just somebody that manipulates. I'm trying to like figure out what's happening, what the cause is, what I can do to help you move better, and I'll use whatever tool I have at my disposal, whether it's innovative or whether it's old school. It doesn't really matter. And to be honest with you, it's patient dependent, or it's athlete dependent. Whoever's on the table in front of you, you need to figure out what it is that you need to do or say to get them to do what they're trying to do.
Well, and I think that's the key. The key is that the approach is multifaceted, in not only from a psychology, personality, to a best practice, to whatever at that exact moment is going to be the right thing at the right time for that player. Certainly, when we're working as a team and traveling, we have the affordability that there are players, and we can really organize an individual care plan. And we do meet regularly as a team with a sports scientist. We've got a PhD. We've got athletic therapists, sport chiro, sport physio, orthopedic surgeon, member of CASM. We've got some psychology support as well. And, you know, our job is to develop individual care plans on both prevention strategies, triage strategies, and then looking at recovery strategies as well. And you know, that's some of the roles we play. So we may come in with our professional designations, but how about that time when we were in Spain, and we sat there one afternoon and made up bags of gummy bears, right? You know, and so we're putting them all. How many do you have in that one, you'd say? And
well,
what colors do you want?
I think we volunteered for that in a way because we wanted to eat some of those gummy bears too, Greg, if I recall. But yeah, I mean, you just nailed it there, like with that teamwork, right? And just kind of doing whatever is required to push this thing forward. And it's I mean, in a different world, if I could have been one of the athletes playing, I would probably pick that, but I can't. So my job is to help these guys succeed in whichever way possible that is. And whether that's like, you know, treating them or packing a nutrition bag for them that might include some gummy bears, or filling an ice tub, or grabbing it doesn't really matter. And, you know, a good team, people are sort of will do whatever. I'm not asking you, do you need help? I'm just giving you help. I'm just going to help you. If you don't want my help, you might say so, but I'm just help one another, right? But in addition to that teamwork that kind of works that way, the other thing, particularly when I think about working with you, is how, and maybe this is another one of sort of John's terms, is keeping it light and bright. It's fun working in that kind of team environment. Like I oftentimes, whether it's the end of a day or coming home after a trip, my stomach is sore. Like my abs are sore from laughing, because we're serious. We got a bunch of big brains in there, but we're always kind of laughing and having, you know, we keep it light and bright. And whether we're singing or we're telling jokes or whatever we're doing, it's fun.
Well, it is, and it's also, there isn't a trip that doesn't go by that we don't share knowledge. So it's like, what are you reading now? And then we go for our walks. It's like our therapy to get away from the team, and our discussions are around education and in innovation, and what's getting us excited. So it's important to also be able to maximize that team sort of environment where you're creating learning opportunities for each other. So it's like, oh, hey, Scotty, show me that. What are you doing that for? And okay, tell me what the end goal is, and how did you get there in your assessment? And the interchangeable part starts to be that we start to pick up some of these real positive characteristics from each other, and we do start to finish each other's sentences almost, and that's that's an education for free. But you got to be open to it, and you also have to be the right personality, that you park the ego and just completely do whatever is needed for the player and the harmony of the team. And I think that to a large extent, it comes down putting the right people in the right place to succeed, but it also takes a master of skills to be able to get that accomplished.
No question. And it's one of the things that I always think about, and perhaps you go on your walks with Dr. Janice Grover a little bit more than me, because I'm sometimes out for a run, but you and I in the sort of going for a walk in the morning, going to get our coffee, and having a chat about what papers or what things are we reading, is always super, super interesting.
Yeah. Well, and Dr. Janice Grover from Newfoundland is part of the team as well. And what's really cool is she was past president, correct?
Correct.
And then was it called first vice president is Dr. Todd Marshall?
Also true.
And I'm actually was just at his office, which is now my office as well. So I've joined Dr. Marshall and Dr. Jacobs, who I've known for well over 20 years. A number of us, my wife and I and another therapist, were creating this integrated clinic. So, wow, I mean, there's the timing of friendships and trust and respect. So it's pretty cool, So tell me, one of the things we talked about when we were out for a walk was we got on to how people think. And part of that was, and I was saying is younger therapists today want the answer. But what I want to know is how their brain got to the answer. And they're very bright in the sense that they're well read, way better read than I ever was. And they've got a lot of information. And we were having a really good laugh. You had a special name for it, and it was like, wow, you teach that. And I thought, wow, because that's exactly what I'm trying to draw out of anybody, really. I want to know the logic. So tell the story about that conversation we had. That was in LA, beautiful morning. We're out for a walk and we start talking about how people think. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so that at the time I was reading the David Epstein book called Range. And so, I mean, to me, one of the ways of actually getting something, jammed into your brain, making some space for it, is after reading it, trying to explain it or trying to talk about it, because you just remember it better that way, right? It would be like you're studying for an exam in a way, and then helping your buddy study for it, and then now you remember it better yourself. But when we were talking, and in that book, there's a lot of information about how people learn, and how sort of the enemy of really deep learning is immediate success. So kind of the struggle with it, kind of like working through it is actually helpful to really understanding it or really getting to the depth of it. Because you have to work out the different nuances. You have to work, the workarounds, if you will, in order to figure it out. And in doing so, you're much better at like putting that into your brain and being able to use it at a future time. So I think that was the conversation we were more or less having. And I mean, there's as a teacher right now, both at the undergraduate level and then at the chiropractic college too, working through an answer or working to get the process is sometimes more beneficial than the result, if you will.
Show your work type of thing,
right? And sort of getting your head wrapped around, like, show me how you thought this or how you worked through this, is more beneficial, and to me makes me think that you've sort of really got it into your brain more effectively than just being able to spit out the answer because you memorized something or there was surface learning involved instead of deep learning. So and like, Greg, we're old. Like, I mean, there was times where we didn't know an answer to something and we had to wait. And then you would read it 2 weeks later in a paper, aha, eureka, I found the answer. Or a professor would tell you a month after somebody asked the question in the class because no one actually knew the answer. Now it's like, if you before you finished asking the question, someone's going to Google it and they can tell you the answer. But that doesn't mean you really get it. That just means, working for it actually makes you get it better.
Well, it does. And I love your question. How many piano tuners are there in Toronto?
Right. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
No idea.
Really? You have no idea.
Think about it.
Think about it. Exactly. Think about it. Work the problem, people. Let's work it. Let's work it. Let's try to, there's an old saying as well. I mean, it's funny. You say that when you get older, but, when you hear the sound of hooves, we think of horses, but every now and then there's a zebra. Now if you lived in Africa, you would probably come up with a different saying. But the point is that, as much as you think something, you have to be able to think what it's not as well. And then your logic will tie you back into a framework that gives you a certain percentage of saying, well, if we don't accomplish this, we have plan B, C, and D behind us, but there's so many things now that seem to be, oh, well, this is the answer. And it's like, is it, well, how'd you get there? And that's cool.
And what I was going to say is, oftentimes we're talking about, like, what are you reading? What new research are you reading? And new research doesn't actually tell us that much. It's interesting, but it's the total body of evidence. So it's what you're reading now, and then the references that fed that paper, and then the references that fed those papers. It's like that total body of evidence makes us maybe do something different. New research is just interesting.
Well, it is. And so we had Dr. Mario Bazzini on a little while ago, who's been on a number of position papers and some Doha papers, and talking about that collaboration. And we talked about how it is so important to bring people from all of our recognized professions together because of what not only is being offered from their direction of philosophy, but also just to be able to spark their knowledge of what other aspects in the research that you can look at that go into the big pot of soup, if you will, to make up some of these position papers. And that's where I think that when we take a look at the world of sport physio, sport chiro, athletic therapy, the sport sciences from a physiology point of view now, nutrition, psychology, you can't speak of one aspect of it, because a human doesn't contain one aspect, and we don't treat one aspect. So it's not just this multidisciplinary approach, but it's really about us gathering information from whatever world body there is, and then to be able to share it. But we still come from philosophical designations, and the world will be a better place, right?
Yeah, and but I think the more we work together on stuff, the more similarities we're actually able to see. The more you see, you might have a different starting point, but maybe not the right analogy, but the all roads lead to Rome kind of scenario. We're all working towards that sort of same spot. And again, I mean, not to make this a soccer conversation, but what makes the therapy team tick for Canada Soccer is Dave Blatz. Like, Dave Blatz is awesome. He's the guy that brought us all together. He's the guy that's identified our different skill sets and how we might be complementary to one another. And really, he's the captain of the ship, and a funny one at that. And that's why we all like working together.
Well, exactly. And it takes that team grouping. And of course, Dave Blatz is a certified athletic therapist who's a longtime therapist with Canada Baseball, has done a number of Olympics and Pan Ams at that level. And without a doubt is one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. And that's part of it, the affability of your team supersedes the specific expertise knowledge. And we know that putting a team together for the benefit of the players, period, is not that easy when we start to advance through educational ranks and we have different egos. And a number of sport chiropractic leaders, to throw him out, I always get his last name wrong, but what a great guy. I met him in 2010, Greg Uchez.
Yep, you got it.
Dr. Robert Gringmuth has been the Ontario Soccer Association guy for so many years. And guys I know, and I know there's so many I'm not saying, but, Dr. Glenn Cashman, who's not only a great guy, but he's lasted, I think, the longest of any team chiropractor in the NHL, working with the Canucks. And again, his skill is impeccable, but his personal fit is really, as a team member, drives it. I do want to touch a little bit on, we'll go all the way back to we'll talk about 2010, which was such an amazing time, the Winter Olympics in Vancouver and Whistler. But the real part of it started a number of years before that. Dr. Jack Taunton, who is, of course, one of our great mentors in the world of sports medicine, amazing guy. Well, he was sort of the complete head of all the medical. And this goes back to 2006, I believe, when they developed the executive team. He put in Dr. Mike Wilkinson, and Rick Celebrini was head of rehabilitation services, and then he just finished his PhD during that time. But the part was that we were bringing in, and I say we, I was in charge of the polyclinic rehabilitation treatment at Whistler. So I was really pleased to be able to work together with Dr. Bob Armitage, who we put together the first sport chiropractic team for any host city for any major games. And that was the first time that was ever done. And I have to tell you, it was a great experience. We had our sport PTs, massage, we had orthotics and bracing. We introduced Bauerfeind at that time. But I do want to give a shout out, because some of these sport chiros were really amazing people to have on the team. And there was a certain amount of, oh, what's this? We weren't sure what the product was going to be. We weren't sure what the people were going to be. But for the Olympics, we had Lisa Grant, Stacy Scott, Wayne Walker, Mike Muzzin, so Muzzy, and Rocco Guerrero, who is one of the, can you say, the godfathers, for all of us, the nicest guy, but what a great educator, what a great brain, what a great experience for the Olympics and having them as part of my team. And for the Paralympics, we had such a great team as well. My wife was a sport physio, Danny Langford. We had a number of what I'll call younger therapists that are qualified participate. And that was Dr. Bill Jacobs, Todd Marshall, Dale McDonald, Michael Titchener, who I've got to know really well, and Clark Konzak was there. So, it was a great time. Again, very well chosen personalities. And we made sure that every week everybody had to give a lecture and a talk, because we looked at it as our Olympics as well for learning and sharing. And that's the way that we've approached it since then. And that's the way that I believe and you believe that we should be approaching this as a team effort.
Yeah, and so you just named a ton of great practitioners there. It's making me think about, I had a student that said recently to me something to the effect of, well, it's all who you know. Like to be selected or to work with or to climb the ranks, it's all who you know. And I that doesn't resonate with me, that idea. And I said, no, it's not who you know. It's who knows what you can do. And I don't know if that's even that much better of a way to say it. But I mean, when you're a young practitioner and you get involved in events and you volunteer at events and I was at Canada Games in 2009 in PEI, and that's where I met John Philpott, and that's where I met Dave Blatz. It's not because of like who do you know. It's like you work with them and they see what you can do, and they see how your skill set could be valuable, and they remember you at a later time. And it's different than who do you know. I think that far undersells what it actually is.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way to having the outcome-based answer as opposed to, just a personal greeting. And a lot of that part of the demonstrating what you do is about then developing the trust in you as a person and your skill set and how you can work together as a group. There's some amazing lone wolves out there, but it doesn't mean that they can fit into the team environment for sure. So listen, what are you reading right now? What do you got on the go? Where's your brain? What's exciting you other than wearing many hats of education and the best job you can do for your clients? But what do you got on the go right now?
To be honest with you, and you, Greg, I'm a runner, but my knee's been barking all summer. I think I got a little bit of a meniscal issue, so my running has not been what it typically is. So I'm trying to become a better golfer, which is quite a challenge. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's a pretty good sport to play in a pandemic time like this. So working on the golf game a little bit. In terms of reading, I just read a paper that confirmed the bias that I probably had before reading it. Do niggles matter? It was a little article about do little injuries that don't take you off the pitch, do those contribute to actually injuries that do take you off the pitch? It appears that they do. But if I was going to call out anybody that is doing some stuff that I want to dive into a little bit deeper, it's I saw this article by Matt Jordan about predicting injury, and he was suggesting that injury prediction is we should think of it like predicting the weather. really interesting little article if you want to dig in on that. But he was talking about also, measuring and using data. And there's this innovation, and hey, it's injuries and innovations, right? It's called, I can't remember if it's called Plantiga or Plantiga or
Yeah.
and it's a little insole that's measuring forces, and it really kind of jumps out at me because I had a patient earlier this morning, an Achilles tendon issue, and we were talking about another paper that came out about how to progress the load on Achilles tendon injuries. This paper came out fairly recently too, med-sci sport exercise, and but the little piece of Matt Jordan, if you can find that one, maybe I'll send it to you after, Greg.
Yeah,
but
do that. Yeah. Well, just to touch on Plantiga, it's actually a BC company with a software, and certainly at high performance, they've been very successful as a company, and they've been rolling out a platform where clinics can actually sign up as and rent the equipment and rent the software, so that it works out to be, I think, about $4 or $5 a patient when you do that assessment. And it just, you look at it and you go, oh, that makes sense. Let's get, instead of having a force plate built into a gym, let's build it into their foot. And then we can have so much more relevant information based on a hockey push-off, based on a basketball maneuver, based on a load on a different turf or different type of ground. So, it certainly gives us and would give us more information about then how to structure prevention and recovery strategies. It's cool.
Well, and that's kind of where it feels like we're at right now, right? Like with sports in general, it really feels like when we get back to things in the fall, everything's going to be compressed. Everything's going to be coming at us fast and furious, right? So our ability to dig in on injury prevention or performance enhancement, recovery is going to be clutch. So I feel like we're going to be on a few more calls.
Yeah.
Leading into the fall here.
Yeah, I agree. And again, sometimes you go backwards 10%. So you've got to go forward 11% to get ahead of the game. And, and that does take different brains, different philosophies that can come together to produce a better product. And I think that, generally speaking, the Sport Chiropractic Fellowship, has really created the ability for such a high quality number of doctors of chiropractic to excel and really represent the profession in the sports world. And also to, like I say, the biggest thing is I think that we all, for a common goal, come together versus diversify or try to create splinters and everything else. We get to work with Dr. Dave Simon, orthopedic surgeon out of Ottawa, and another very well-read, not only in the sort of orthopedic sport world, but his diversification just lays so many other options on the plate. And I think that's the key, is this progressive thinking for all of us to keep challenging us about what's new, so we can always circle back to create the best care plans for the players.
Yeah, no doubt.
So what would be fun is to actually bring the whole men's group on one day and have a group chat and sort of demonstrate the diversity. But right now it's all about the RCCSS, in the sense that the designation, and also the certainly uplift of not only knowledge but experience that comes along with it. This is not meant to be a promo for Sport Chiro, but it's really meant to be an education session for what the designation means and the amount of work that goes into it, and then the amount of quality people that represent that as well. So, Scott, we can certainly take a look at, having another session. What is there anything you want to tell anybody out there about sort of the designation and what's coming up in the world of sport chiropractic?
Well, we've been having some conversations about our fall conference that's going to be here. Well, usually it's here in Toronto. About this year moving to a virtual, like a Zoom kind of a platform. And funny enough, the theme for this upcoming conference is move, like the science of movement. So it would be interesting, I think, to a lot of different practitioners. So stay tuned for that. We're probably a November date, and a virtual conference is the way to go these days, right? In terms of different sporting involvement, I don't know that. I mean, everything seems to be a little bit up in the air right now in terms of what events may happen or may not happen. It's interesting to see how professional sports is getting back to it and making this bubble scenario work. We'll see how that turns out in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, I'd be happy to come back and certainly chat with you again about anything, whether it's just us or with the whole group. That would be excellent, totally fun. I don't know, for the young practitioner out there, I think if there's any like kind of closing things, it would be like, I think, and maybe in our conversation this just came out anyways, but I think I would really say stay humble. Check your ego at the door, but at the same time, you need to be confident and you need to give an opinion. You need to. It's okay to be wrong, but you have to be something. Like you have to give an answer. You have to contribute. Be confident. Stay humble. Work that out.
That's it. Yeah. Take your personality and optimize it with backfill with your knowledge, so yeah. And listen, we'll talk some more. We've got some great new validation on the ability for Coreshorts to improve movement for certain individuals and stability issues. So that will be great to follow up with you on as well. So listen, let's wrap up today. I know you got a busy day in the office and you've got things to do. And here at Injuries, Innovations, and Insights, today's been a great discussion with Dr. Scott Howitt, spending his time and taking a deeper dive into sport chiropractic. And he's currently the president of the Royal College of Chiropractic Sports Sciences. And I think, again, what I would like to say is that, we have options out there. And for all of us as therapists, we need to seek out the appropriate people to join a rehabilitation team when we're working with athletes, because it's going to happen, and it certainly happens better with collaboration, communication, and consult. And that's the way that we should always be looking at it. So Dr. Scott Howitt, thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to filling gummy bear bags with you any day on the road, and we'll certainly talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Cheers.